The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 835. And it is coming to you on Monday, the 22nd of August, 2016. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic studying abroad. But before getting into the topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, my deepest condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And I refer in particular to the family of the late Mr. Joel Miguel from Mariacoa, my very good client, and the family of Sister Joyce Warner, formerly of Glamorgan, but recently living in Trinidad and Tobago, where I understand she would be buried, and the mother and father and siblings of the young student who died on Friday morning in that vehicular accident at Hopewell, Mariacoa. Beautiful child from the photograph I've seen on Eyewitness News, and so very tragic that she died having celebrated achieving subjects at CXC. My heart goes out to the mother and father. It isn't easy to get news of an accidental death of a teenager, particularly one with such promise. And I know it, because I know what it is to suffer that sort of loss. And let me also, in that connection, mention I gather that Miss Lynch in French has passed on. My sympathies to her family as well. Excuse me. Speaking about subjects, I want to congratulate all students who have been successful in their various exams, particularly the young man who has broken all sorts of records with 20 O-level passes. Just fantastic. That boy is a genius in the making. My congratulations to him. And belated congratulations to the new Commissioner of Police and the new Deputy Commissioner of Police, both of whom I know quite well. And let me say thank you to the outgoing commissioner and the outgoing deputy, the outgoing commissioner, for the service which he has rendered to the force at a critical time. I'm sure the society will hear much more from Brother Charles. Sorry, I have a ticklish throat. As Bishop Dr. Cecil George Riley and Lady Riley and their traveling companions leave St. Vincent and the Grenadines after a successful convention, let me wish them all the best. And let me congratulate the people of Spring Village for coming out so well last Wednesday night for the service held in the Spring Village Methodist School. And you would have heard the bishop announce that in future he would devote the Wednesday night of his convention week in St. Vincent and Grenadines to the people of Spring Village. Congratulations, all of you. Well, I want to begin with the actual program, studying abroad. As you know, every year at around this time, I speak on that topic or similar topics to alert Vincentians who are scheduled to go from St. Vincent and Grenadines to study in other countries. Most of what I say would really apply to the wider field, not to the Caribbean, because people who go to Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, or perhaps Guyana, to the several universities, would be still in a Caribbean environment. But I hope you will take comfort from what I say concerning people studying in other countries. Now, the first thing you need to be aware of, and the first thing you need to be prepared for, is to safeguard your health. So that if you have had health issues, make sure when you travel, you take with you all documentation from your local doctors, the list of prescriptions you have been taking, any medical procedures you have undergone. Carry those in writing. If it is not too late, get statements and certificates and letters from your health providers so that as soon as you go where you're going to study, you can have yourself registered so that if anything happens to you, they would have your history at their fingertips. And when you land in your country of study, make sure you check out the nearest health institutions and you know which ones you have to pay for and which ones the state will be providing for you. Make sure you check that out. I mean, your health is of vital importance. But if you have been perfectly healthy and had no health issues, then when you go abroad, still take care of yourself. It's always useful to know where is the nearest institution, to have a telephone number in case of an emergency. You may get up one morning with vomiting or some other serious ailment, and you'd want to know where to call and where to go for immediate treatment. Now, of course, personal safety then becomes your next issue. These are not the days when you could go to a big city and walk about by yourself and so on. These are terrible days in all countries. And you have to be very, very careful for your own personal security. If you're in a big city, never ever leave your residence alone at night. In fact, you should even be careful how you leave alone in the day. But when it comes to night time, don't say you're going out by yourself. That is simply craziness. Make sure you go with companions and, if possible, friends of yours who live either in the same hall of residence or in the same area. Let them know where you're going and keep in contact with them by telephone. This is no time to be adventurous and to say you're going to explore. By all means, you will have to get to know your neighborhood, but do it in a sensible manner. You and you alone are responsible for your personal safety. And if by chance you find yourself in a situation where you are mugged, do not offer physical resistance. Don't offer to fight. Somebody stick you up at gunpoint in a city and ask for your wallet, give it to them. It isn't worth losing your life over the contents of your wallet. Whatever money you have, if they stick you up, give it to them and then make a report to the police. But don't offer resistance. You might say, okay, you have done karate or taekwondo or some other martial art and you could defend yourself. That is just foolishness. Let them have it. As Shakespeare said, he who steals my purse steals trash. I mean, of course, your purse will be valuable, particularly if you have identification cards and credit cards and so on. But it isn't worth your life. It isn't worth getting injured in the protection of things like a wallet and and money. Now, one of the points I want you to be particularly mindful of is this. When you go to somebody else's country, go with an attitude of respect for the laws of that country. Respect the customs and the practices of the people where you are going. You are a guest in somebody else's country. Conduct yourself with due decorum. Do not be openly critical of people living elsewhere and their lifestyles and what you see them do. Even if you have your own reservations, keep them to yourself. Don't go and say you're criticizing the way people live in those countries. And don't go and say you're breaking the laws of the country in which you are studying, even if you think you will get away with it. Respect the laws of the countries you are going to study in. Don't follow a multitude to do evil, the old people would warn us. If you find yourself in a group and you observe that the group is disorderly and disrespectful of the laws and customs and practices of the place you are studying in, get away from that group. Don't be led by people to get yourself in trouble. In that connection, if there is a diplomatic representative from St. Vincent and Grenadines, suppose you go to study in a country where there's a St. Vincent High Commission or embassy, get yourself registered at the High Commission or embassy. Let them know, hey, I am here. Give them your address, your telephone number, and keep in touch with your embassy. If St. Vincent and Grenadines hasn't got an embassy or high commission in the country in which you are studying, find out before you leave here from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs which consulate or embassy of another country looks after the interests of St. Vincent and Grenadines. See, for example, you may go to study in France. Well, we have no embassy in France, but perhaps St. Vincent has a connection with the British Embassy in France, in Paris. Let the Foreign Affairs people know you are going there so that they can send a message to the British Embassy in France, in Paris, to say, okay, we have a student by the name of so-and-so studying at the Sorbonne or wherever, so that if anything happens and you get into any trouble, you can phone up the embassy that assists St. Vincent and Grenadines with their diplomatic problems and matters. It isn't sensible to be in a country and not know who to turn to if you need help from a diplomatic post. These are things you take for granted, and people think about these things only when it is too late. If you go to a country where English is not the usual language, then take special precautions. Make sure that when you say something, you are understood. Now, the bulk of Vincentians going abroad would be of a dark complexion. As you know, there are countries of this world in which the color of your skin places you at an immediate disadvantage. Be aware of that. Don't go expecting racism, but at the same time, it exists in certain countries. And when you face it, don't overreact and get excited or get rowdy or violent if you are taunted or if you hear racial insults. What I'm saying is that you have to use your common sense and tact. Always remember the basic reason why you are going abroad is to study and to be qualified, ultimately to better yourself and your family. It is different if you are migrating to the country to live permanently. Then, of course, you would have migrated because of some relative in that country who has sponsored you. So you immediately have a cocoon in which you can establish yourself in that country and grow. You have already home, family, friends who would look after you when you go to live permanently. But not many people these days get the opportunity to do that unless you are sponsored. I'm speaking about people who go as students. That is why the topic of this discussion is studying abroad. You've gone to study. Now, I don't have to tell you that Vincentians have a proud record of excellence when they go abroad to study. Remember, a few years ago, I was so proud and overjoyed when the persons who delivered valedictory addresses on all 3 campuses in the Caribbean were Vincentians. A Vincentian was the valedictorian at Mona, Jamaica, at Cave Hill in Barbados, and at St. Augustine in Trinidad, all in the same year, which is a mark of academic and behavioral excellence. So we do have the tradition that Vincentian people make good students. So you have a tradition to defend and to further. You hardly hear of a Vincentian going abroad and failing. And every week, almost in the newspaper, certainly at graduation time, June, July, August, you would see a photograph or a story of successful Vincentian graduates. Excuse me. So you have a tradition to maintain. Do your studies, that is what you're there for. You might have hardships to put up with, but nothing you face would be something new entirely. Others have faced those hardships too and have overcome them. So too can you. Now let me say this. Outside the Caribbean, and even in the Caribbean, but particularly so outside, the vast majority of university campuses are hotbeds of atheism. But you will also find in almost every campus there's a Christian community where you can fellowship. But don't be alarmed when you go to your lectures and you hear comments from your lecturers and professors treating religious beliefs as mere superstition. At first it will shock you, but then you get accustomed to it. But be prepared for it. But if you go to United States of America, Canada, Britain, almost every university has some body of believers who meet regularly and where you can keep in touch with your religious observances. You may find that a church of your affiliation is far from the campus where you are studying. And unfortunately, some students drift away from their religious observances because the nearest place of worship is many, many miles away. And after a while, they get themselves led astray and get away from their faith. You keep close to God at all times, and He will keep close to you. But if you drift away from Him, you lose the protection offered by His grace and His favor. Now, naturally, you need strength of character. You have to be a person who could listen to others and say no. You hear your friends say, let's go out in the town, let's go and have a good time. Know when to say no or when to say, okay, I'll come along. When you have assignments which are due, it is no time to go gallivanting. Even if your friends are annoyed with you and feel you're a killjoy or a spoiled sport or whatever else, you say sorry. And do not find yourself taking drugs of whatever variety. And you should be severely disciplined to avoid alcohol. And if you can't avoid alcohol totally, certainly avoid alcohol excessively. The thing about being abroad is that you are away from the immediate influence of family. There's nobody around to tell you, boy, don't do this, or girl, don't do that. You are entirely on your own. It's an exhilarating sense of freedom. But be sensible. Be sensible. Don't think that freedom means a license to throw it all away and throw out all your training and everything that people have taught you in your home. Throw it all overboard and carry on as if you have nobody to give account to. These days, it will be easier for you to keep in touch with home because of electronic devices. In the days when I studied in Canada between 1965 and 1968, I could only communicate by letter. Telephone calls were far too expensive. And letters took a good 3 weeks to a month to travel between St. Vincent and Grenadines and Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where I was. In the days when I studied, those of us who got scholarships to study in Canada went and remained for the 3 full years before coming home. We had no such thing as passage home at the end of the year. I went in September 65, came back in May 68. No in-between visits to St. Vincent and Grenadines. But I wrote my letters and I received my letters. Nowadays, you are in touch with your cell phone constantly. So you can communicate easier. You're in touch with everything that goes on at home. You get news through various devices. And now you can talk to people at home by Skype. So in a sense, you who are going to study these days have it much easier than those of us who studied in days gone by. So in a sense, you should be less lonely. Now the final point I want to make to you is to be careful with your finances. If you travel with any significant amount of cash, as soon as you reach, go and put it in a bank. Some institutions have a facility on the campus where they can hold your money for you. But don't say you're keeping cash with you in your dormitory or in your apartment. Sooner or later it will get stolen. And even if you are reasonably well off financially, don't let people know you are well off. Otherwise you would become a source of borrowing from other people. And people will stick by you because they can scrunt you. The bottom line is be sensible. When things get hard, you have to sacrifice. Don't go get yourself into trouble by trying to borrow money here and there which you can't pay back, and for which you sometimes have to compromise yourself. There are times when money would be late in coming to you. Know who you can depend on. And if you have to borrow money from a friend or colleague, soon as you get your own money, pay back. Okay? Well, I want to wish all of you going abroad all the very best. Keep up the tradition of Vincentian excellence, and may the good Lord attend upon all your endeavors and bless you as a student. That is all from this program of The Law and You, program number 835. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DV, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a very pleasant week, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel R. Campbell QC, and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.